So here's a great story. You always have great stories. Here's my great story.
Okay.
I can't even tell you the year. So I was in grad school. So we're talking 2009 or 2010. I
Okay.
drove from Rhode Island. I was living in Johnston, Rhode Island, working at my
Oh,
offensive
wow.
line coach's gym. I drove from Johnston, Rhode Island to West Virginia for their strength and conditioning clinic because I heard about it
Okay.
on back when it was called like Sports Performance Network. This was when Kier didn't have SCN or rugby strength coach. This was
Way
09 or
before.
10. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I got nothing better to do. I love strength conditioning. I can drive there. It's like 7 hours or something. And I drove and I met Mike there. I met Daryl Bauer, who just took over at TCU, and Brian Fitzpatrick, who is at Navy now. But
Yeah.
like just insane. And like the packet that I had, like I remember seeing that weight room being like, this is insane. And then
Yeah.
fast
Yeah.
forward till 2021, one of my former interns was from there. I helped him get an internship with Mike. And then in Towson, we played West Virginia in 2022. And I got to meet Mike, see Carson again. And we took our opening kickoff to the house and then never
Oh,
scored
wow.
again.
That was the end of that.
That was the end of that.
Is Towson, like, what size school is that? I'm not as familiar with it.
We had 550 student athletes. I don't know the number of people that attended there. It was a really big commuter school because being in Towson, but we had a Towson zip code, but I mean, I had a
Okay.
Baltimore address and I
Okay.
live less than a mile away. So there's Baltimore County was there. Baltimore City wasn't that far away, the Timonium area. So people would do a good amount of commuting versus just living on campus.
Okay.
But it was a FCS school. Anybody listening? We used to play James Madison in Delaware. Like the fact that we played James Madison in 2022,
Yeah.
and then fast forward 3 years later, they were in the college football playoff. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, admin, when you were giving us such a hard time about not being able to compete with them,
Yeah.
you see why? Like us keeping it a 2-score game is incredible.
Yeah. 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 So that's a Division I school. Conference wise, they play in a decent sized school
They used
conference.
to. Now it's completely changed. Like a lot of those people have left.
Okay. Huh. Interesting.
Director. So why can't I think? I was just saying his name. Joe. So director, player, director, assistant, administrative assistant, director of player, director. Like, because everybody's got all the assistants, a head football coach. Everybody's got all these weird names instead of just like head strength and conditioning coach.
It's different now. I noticed that a lot of the roles or the titles are not the same everywhere. Because I have a lot of customers obviously that serve in those roles, and their titles will be different. And I always give them a little bit like unsure of, you know what I mean? Who does what?
Yeah, like why? I don't understand what's wrong with just using like head strength coach.
I think one of the things that they did, if I understand correctly, was like they created a new name for a guy who's over everything. Who's
Director
like
of high performance is usually that one.
that guy, and then you got a director of sports science. Is that typical? Yeah. That's what I hear.
Yeah. So Mike Joseph is still there. So he's listed. The reason I couldn't find it is because he's up with the coaching staff, not below under support staff. So Mike Joseph is assistant athletics director, head strength coach for football, head coach for strength and conditioning. Yeah. I mean, I think that's now 4 strength coaches. He's been there since 2008.
Amen. Good for him.
Fucking right. Good for you, Mike. That's somebody I got to get on the show.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm representing. You sent me this a long time ago, Mike. If you see this,
you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to screen grab this.
Okay.
And then I'm going to send it to. I'm going to be like, hey, we were talking about you today. Screen grab.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to capture. Why did that not take? All right, so welcome into the show, everybody. That's kind of been a little bit of a boring intro for you all, but
yeah, no good laughs. Like sometimes it beats like that.
So, what'd you get here from pages 61 to 75? What do you got?
So, you're the guide, but I saw some stuff.
No. I am not the guy. You are the guy. Nobody is like, oh, I'm so glad Justin did this. I'm so glad you're doing this. Yosef is a wealth of information. So let's just get that right out of the way.
I saw some stuff on a couple of different pages. that I thought was really kind of, it was really interesting in terms of things that we do or things that we, principles that that we talk about. And then there was a couple of things that really caught my attention in terms of some thoughts I had. So I'm going to give you one because I thought this was interesting. And let me look at the page number here. Okay. Yeah. So I was looking at when they were talking about hypertrophy, because you mentioned that to me before, and they talk about hyperplasia and does it happen? How does it happen? Or whatever. That's kind of interesting. But what I thought was kind of cool, I had noticed this over years with athletes that we had trained, because most of the time the athletes that we train, the type of training is lower volume in comparison to other people, right? And I always noticed that. I'm like, all the kids that I train, I notice that they are heavier than they look.
Teambuildr is Strength Coach Network's trusted provider for online software for strength coaches. It does not matter what sector of strength and conditioning you work in, you want to get Teambuildr because you will be able to program for your athletes, simply distribute the training to them, and make changes, modifications, whatever you need. I've been utilizing them since 2019 when I was back at Towson. I still use it in person at Goldfinch with all my remote clients throughout the country, and in person at the high school, Centennial High, right down the road when I was volunteering for them. You got to check out Teambuildr in the link down below. The people that work for them are former strength and conditioning coaches, so they get it. They are able to help you with all of your needs. Again, reach out to your Teambuildr rep and learn more about them in the link down below.
And this was just anecdotal, right? Anecdotal. And they always are real solid, but they don't look big. And, because I was getting some I don't want to say pushback, but like, I guess negative feedback sometimes from coaches, like these guys aren't big enough. Right. And I remember thinking this, but they're training, and obviously getting bigger. A lot of it relates to eating. If you don't eat enough, then nothing matters. But there was something else that I noticed and I asked Brian about it, and he Brian Mann, and he's like, yeah, you're right. And here's why. But I'm going to read to you what it is. The data shows that the longer and more strenuous submaximal loading, not the rapid near maximal low repetition loading of Olympic weightlifting, the less there is sarcomere hypertrophy and the more there is sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. So you look a little puffier because you've got more sarcoplasm in the tissue, and less, it's not as dense with the fibers. And I just, that puzzled me for, a while. And then, and now reading this like that, I mean, Brian answered my question, but this is like, oh, wow. How cool is that? That it was in Supertraining. And that makes all the sense in the world now. And one other thing that was on that same page that I wanted to bring up real quickly was about hypertrophy. Like if you're chasing hypertrophy, right? So like if you're this mostly happens probably in football than any other sport, but you're chasing hypertrophy, right? On page 67, it says, thus, excessive hypertrophy usually leads to slower muscle recovery after exercise, deterioration in speed strength, and speed, as well as an increased incidence of injury. And the tissue is less vascular.
I wrote that down, and I wanted you to talk about that because I was like, define excessive, because you need it in some sports. I instantly thought of rugby, American football, hockey, right?
Yeah. I think what it is, and I could be wrong about this, I think it's the chasing the hypertrophy instead of just letting it be a byproduct, right? So I'll give you an example. If you look at bodybuilding is the penultimate for hypertrophy, right? That's the only point is that, right? Of the training component. And here's what you find with that, though, is like you could go back to the days of Arnold, Schwarzenegger back in the 70s, and they were using extremely high volume. Then you get into the 80s, and it starts to drop a little bit. Higher volume, but less volume with like Lee Haney. And then you but during that time frame, you also had Mike Mincer, who was a hit advocate, and they were only using one set to absolute failure. And then Dorian Yates took that a little further. Now, here's the thing that's common with all of the different styles. They're all enormous people. Everybody's big, right? Like, you can't say that one style the better style. I don't know, but they all worked. Because all things being equal, all of those guys ate a lot. They all took steroids. And in each era, they probably took similar stuff, depending on the era that they were in. So it's apples to apples, in that regard. And now you got the newer guy, he's not totally new, but the former Mr. Olympia, Samson Dauda, who's 5'11", still has abs, and he weighs 350 pounds. I mean, he's just gigantic, right? And he uses a little bit of a different style. So I thought that was, when they say, well, this is how you have to, to develop hypertrophy, there's many ways to skin that cat. But the diet is probably the biggest rate limiting factor, I would say. I don't think it's so much style. So I don't think that, like, I think that the higher volume stuff definitely works for sure. Lower volume stuff works too. I think though, if you're trying to get hypertrophy in the field of sports, like let's say in football, you probably should lean away from the higher volume stuff, that bodybuilding kind of approach, because there's negatives, but on the other side, there's no negative. There's not the negatives, and you get the positives. You get bigger, but you also get more powerful, faster.
I wrote hyperplasia, hypertrophy. Who gives a fuck, right? Like,
it doesn't matter,
right? Like, because I mean, but it did say here in 66, like, it could be based off of certain extreme loading, that maybe that is what results in the hyperplasia. And
yeah,
because to your point, like, okay, is it on 66? Is it thicker muscle fibers? Is it
yeah?
If they look bigger and are able to produce more force, like you said, cool. But does it change how I coach?
Right. It doesn't really change anything. And like, you want that muscle to be able to produce more force, if you will, and more power. And according to page 67, you can't do that. Like it's really not gonna it's not gonna do the trick either way. So it doesn't matter, right?
Well, and then people talking too before about like functional hypertrophy, and I first heard that from Mike Chapman.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where people would say, like, oh, what's your definition of functional? We're going to define it as hypertrophy being a big bodybuilder, lifting on machines, versus functional hypertrophy, still getting the neurological development of, hey, my legs are big because I did a bunch of back squats, front squats, lunges, RDLs, versus leg extensions and leg curls. Like,
it's interesting. I never thought about it that way. And I always would hear people, because they would come to me, like sometimes a parent would come to me like, he needs to put on 20 pounds. And I tell them, as always, I'm like, look, that's going to be mostly diet related. I have two examples. I had one kid that I started with in the 8th grade. He weighed 165 pounds. We worked together for 4 years. When he graduated, he weighed 165 pounds. He didn't gain 1 ounce. And then I had another kid who was, I'm trying to think, he was 185 pounds when he came to me. We worked together for 6 months, and he was 220 at the end. He gained 35 pounds. And the interesting part of it was that he gained 9 inches on his vertical during that time, which is the most dramatic thing I'd seen in terms of weight gain and improvement in vertical jump. He went from I think it was 19 inches to 28, I think was at that time. So it was kind of weird, but he gained all this weight, and I didn't do anything differently. They both trained the exact same way, right? So that tells you that then there's other factors involved.
Oh, yeah. And like, talk about the weight gain stuff. Like, I got another kid, like a high school kid that is going to be going to UNI. I think I was talking to you about him the other day. He already had a fantastic frame of lower body. He's tall. He's 6'4". Like if he could get to that 6'5", he was flirting with 205 all season, and he was able to play and get away with it. But now something has clicked in him, and he's now up to 213, 212. And I talk with him and his mom because his mom owned a gym. They get it. They're dialed in. Like this is the type of kid you desire to work with.
Yeah.
And I asked him and her, I was like, what's been the reason for success?
Yeah.
And she's like, he wants it now. Like it's no longer like externally driven. And he's like, yeah, no, like I'm doing the thing. I'm actually eating. You know, the information hasn't changed. The kid is just doing it. Hawkin Dynamics is Strength Coach Network's trusted provider for force plates and for handheld dynamometers. Not only am I using it now in the private sector at Goldfinch, I was utilizing this software when I was back at Towson University. You're able to transport the plates because I've taken them from our private sector facility to our other locations. Also been able to take it from our private in-person location to the high school down the road to do some testing with athletes right then and there. You're able to pair your true strength with the striking difference machine. The people at Hawkin are fantastic. The technology is second to none. You have to learn more about Hawkin Dynamic in the link down below.
Component. So yeah, I think that what should be noted there is that there's more than one way to skin that cat as far as the size thing, and there's different ways. But the one variable that is not changeable, I guess, if you will, is you have to eat, and you have to eat in excess of what's needed, right? And I think the general rule of thumb is a gram of protein per pound of body weight, which is a lot. People don't think about that's a lot.
It's a
when
lot.
You have to, you know what I mean? If you got a lineman that's 300 pounds, 300 grams of protein is no joke. That's a lot. That's like 10 chicken breasts a day. You know,
and that's where, and because I had a nutritionist when I was working at Towson. She's like, you know, you can't be telling the guys to be eating that much protein at once because they can't digest more than 30. I was like, bullshit, they can't. Your body can. There's other research studies that have come out since then. They can. And I said that exact thing. I said, okay, so how am I supposed to tell a football player that is 330-pound offensive lineman that they can't eat more than 30 grams of protein? They have to eat 10 servings of it. That I go, they literally wouldn't be able to sleep.
You can't. Yeah, you couldn't fit it into the day.
Right.
You're right. That was kind of like a long held belief, and like you said, current research shows that that's not true. Obviously, it can't be true because bodybuilders do it all the time. You know, they have to eat way more than 30. It would be impossible for somebody like, you know, Ronnie Coleman was doing 450 grams of protein a day, you know, at his peak. It's impossible. He'd have to eat 15 meals a day. When's he going to do that?
Yeah, you can eat up to 25% of your body weight is the most recent research. And if anybody, like Pratik Patel has been the one that has educated me on that topic. And that's why.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. I mean, the practical has proven that to not be true, obviously. Yes. So it's I think that's just a kind of a silly, like you said, it's kind of a silly argument.
Within this, though, one of the things that jumped out to me at the beginning of it was hyper versus hypo thyroid stuff, which made me think back to that webinar that you had sent me before on hormones running hot. And to me, that just continued to emphasize we don't always have to do too much stress stuff because that hyperthyroidism is going to reflect the ability to gain weight or not gain weight, because we don't always need to be doing hard stuff all the time. Like, yes, you need to touch it, and you can still get quasi isometrics on the last rep of that 1x20. Sure, still do the hard stuff, but like it doesn't have to be the over prescription of really, really hard stuff all the stinking time, because if you're doing that, you could be blunting certain athletes' ability to gain weight, as it says right here.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that was another thing that I was interested by was that they said that this chronic, stress, like this high levels of stress all the time are not a good idea.
No.
You know what I mean? And there was, I'm looking here right now at one of the pages there. I think it was on page 60. The way that I'm going to see if I can read this here. So how the different hormones enlarge or decrease the fibers, like what you were just saying, and then excess quantities of thyroid or glucocorticoids promote their catabolism or breakdown. That was interesting. And one of the other things this isn't in the book, but this was a side note that came into my mind when I was reading this. You remember like during the baseball time when steroids were the big thing, and everybody said, the only difference that steroids make, because they would put people on television who really weren't experts. They would, some guy, a journalist who talked to somebody who really didn't understand it. So the only difference that steroids make is that stuff that used to go to the warning track now is going over the fence. That's all. That
was what it was said. Yes.
Yeah, and they said that it does not help you hit the ball. I looked into that because I was just curious. Actually, it's not true. Speed of reaction is affected greatly by steroids, different ones. Reaction time and the speed of contraction are affected real significantly by steroids. And so I thought that was kind of interesting because they were talking about that in here, the effect of testosterone on fast twitch fibers, on the effects.
They also were talking here about the hypertrophy of the motor units and like that being hypertrophized as well. I don't know if that's a word, hypertrophized.
Well, whatever it is now. You just made it one.
I wrote that. I was like, that's insane.
Yeah. So actually, it's not true that it's just that you hit the ball further. Your reaction time, speed of contraction actually is affected by
because
that.
I wonder about the testosterone and any of those anabolic steroids on the effect in the brain. Because anybody that's listening now, they're like thinking back towards the end of it, where talking about cerebellum and brain stuff, and this is Jeff Moyer's alley right up there, because in terms of the processing, and if we can increase the strength and that muscle, because it is still a muscle as well, because it's a plastic brain, like, hey, you're right.
Yeah, and we mentioned this I think previously, but like there are substances that improve that, and there were some that were put out in Russia. One's called mildronate is one of the names of it. There's a couple of them that work with the nervous system or the brain. And one of the real famous tennis players got caught using it. One of the, I want to say, it wasn't Kornikova. It was one of the female pro tennis players, and she got disqualified for the use of it. So there are things that do affect it. And then we talked about the natural supplements that you could take. Alpha GPC increases acetylcholine, which will have an effect. And then you've also got other various substances that will also help with that. So obviously, if there are things that can be done, and some of the steroids also play a role. And I think the reason why people got confused by that, because they only thought of the steroids in the context of a bodybuilder. He gets bigger, he gets stronger, and he gets kind of slower. But that's not secondary to the drug use. It's secondary to the way that he trains.
Correct. Which continues the circle in the loop of atrophy and inactivity, because it relates to the motor unit too. So it's again just, hopefully everybody's starting to notice a theme is everything is connected with it, and we're tying in the importance of the nervous system, which, as you had alluded to, though, it was just, hey, I'm bigger, I'm stronger, my body is. Now, because my body is bigger, that little contact that was a double is a home run, or it was a single, now it's a double. Because, I'm just bigger, right? I put more power into the ball, versus like, no, there's the nervous, like maybe they didn't actually gain any weight, right?
Yeah. I mean, definitely size plays a role in it. Correct. But it's just like strength. It's not linear, though. Like,
it can't be, right? We've learned that it can't be, right? There's just no way.
The bigger you get doesn't mean that you hit the ball further and further.
Yeah.
Or if you're a shot putter, the bigger that you get, the further you throw the shot. It's not true. Obviously, there's a limit to it. It does play a role at some level, and then it starts to become kind of a like there's no relationship, and then I think it probably becomes a negative relationship too at some point. Yeah. Where you actually throw or hit not as far because of how big you are. So, but anyway, I thought that was kind of neat to see that in this book, because I didn't expect to see it.
Vitruve is the trusted VBT source for Strength Coach Network, and I have been utilizing this for years at Goldfinch, and I'm going to continue to utilize it because the great price for the encoder, as well as the accuracy with the data. Whether I'm measuring average, peak, or any other metric, if I want to include range of motion, fatigue loss during the set, intra-set, whatever it is, I can trust Vitruve. And they are continuing to push the needle and continuing to educate coaches on best practices within the VBT world. Not only do they live in that VBT world, but now they've come out with their new hub. And if you want to learn more about the hub and how it can help you with all of your athletes that you are working with, as we are starting to do this at Goldfinch for our middle school all the way up to college athletes, check them out in the link down below. Yeah, and how it says here too, the largest muscles tend to atrophy and hypertrophy the most, irrespective of fiber type. And so, like, that would be your, like, you know, people. That was what bros were saying back in the day, like, oh, you're going to gain it fast, but you're going to lose it fast.
Yeah. Those guys were really smart.
Okay, yeah, and I think you said here on page 62, excessive strenuous training can produce stagnation or decrease hypertrophy, like production of some minimal level of force for some minimal amount of time. So that right here is, again, why we don't always have to tap into the hard things too long for too long, yet we always are running these athletes into the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it keeps reinforcing the idea, and you know, Natalia spoke about this, you know, quite a while back at the CBAS event with Jay, that all the research shows that this prolonged high intensity stuff doesn't work. It's medium level, even with elite athletes, it's medium level intensity that really does it. Medium level intensity and volume, you know, in the kind of more in the middle, is really what produces the best result with athletes. And Anatoly said that many times, and that's the way that he did his stuff too, you know. So
Which is shown by his pyramid of what the things like when you look, there's the base, but then there's your SPEs and your SDEs, and that's the medium intensity stuff.
Yeah, it's just not necessary. And nobody can really show you proof, and even anecdotally, of this real crazy amount of work producing a superior result. And the Oklahoma State? Yeah, Oklahoma State study showed that, in fact, nobody's getting faster at the collegiate level anyway. So I think that, yeah, a lot of work's being done, and there's not very much juice being rendered from the squeeze.
Page 62, that's also the one where it said muscles and motor units can atrophy without altering their fatigability, which we then talked about last week in terms of that actually, like, it does help with their contractural strength because those intermediates shift into the Bs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, talking about how hard it is for muscle biopsies, because I wrote here too, it'd be dope to see this done with powerlifters, because it said no definitive relationship has been found between max force and muscle fiber composition. And it's like, it'd be really interesting to actually do, you know, and get the muscle fiber biopsies, but then it did give us a suggestion and ability to say, okay, you can measure circumference and then try to do force output on like a Hawkin force plate if you wanted to. But to actually get the biopsy and see, like, all right, hey, powerlifter, pre-phase, you know, 16-week competition, or like two of them, 32 weeks, half of it, or, you know, almost 2/3 of a year. Let's get a muscle biopsy, do it again post-competition, and see, like, golly, just to stop, you know what I mean? But I know how invasive that is. That's why you have to be able to fund research, so that way you can pay the participants, because otherwise there's no reason for them to want to do it.
And this kind of goes back to the thing that we've mentioned multiple times, is that we don't really have a system in the United States, because you know, we don't really do any of that type of research. So it's really difficult to draw. You know, I think it's kind of silly that we draw conclusions based on American, if you want to call it quote unquote research, when we really don't have much. It's like, what are we drawing?
We have numbers, right? And like some qualitative numbers, but we don't actually have like as many things going into the actual muscle and seeing what's going on.
Yeah, right.
But that's also because, like you said, you had to do it because you were serving Mother Russia.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like it was just part of the gig. You knew what you signed up for.
Yeah, exactly.
And your comfort was not the primary I mean, even in the United States, so I don't even know if it's just that, because I think we probably have people here that would be willing to do it, but there's
I
nobody
think so.
organizing the research. Nobody's funding it, and nobody's conducting it.
That's what I was gonna say. Nobody's like, where are you gonna get somebody that's gonna fund it? Because you have to give people, and that's the other hard part about it too. And I don't think a lot of strength coaches understand this until they like when you read research, you always want to attack things, and you want to. And I did it. So that's where I'm saying, like, I read it. I'm like, oh, what the? And it's like, until you understand that to do something scientifically, you want to have you need to have a control group, so a group of people that are going to do nothing. So if you're going to try to tell a group of football players, basketball players, baseball players, hey, we're going to do this intervention, and it could or could not make you better. We think it's going to make you better, but you're not going to do it because you're in the control group. It's hard to get those type of highly skilled athletes and sport coaches to sign off on them not doing something that's going to help them.
For sure, for sure. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things there that would be impediments that the government would have to probably be involved, or somebody uber wealthy to put down the money. And then here's the other thing: we don't have a system that develops high level scientists either. Like, who do we have? Who is our equivalent of Uri, or you know?
Yeah, where would somebody go? You're saying?
Yeah, what would be the institute that you would go to be trained to be, so that you could start off at the level that they ended on? You almost would have to reinvent the wheel to some degree, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, where I would, if I had to give you an answer, I would start with Quincy at the Kansas Rock Chalk, like that facility, that sports, and I'll be seeing them in just under 3, but like that place where there actually is that, and they have some integration with athletics, that would be my first place. And I don't know if maybe some of our listeners are screaming at the top of their lungs, like, hey, it's here and do this instead. But
yeah,
like I said, I wouldn't know. That's where I would start.
If you looked at it,
I guess you could say Brian and what he's trying to do at Texas A&M too.
Yeah, and even like at Nebraska with what Matt's doing, you know, they have some things going on, you know.
Yep.
But like, think about it. Where do you train? Where are the Zatsiorskis, the Veroshanskis, you know, Matveyev, all these different guys, Donskoy. I mean, I'm thinking of Igor Ratov, the really brilliant guys, you know, in the scientific field. We don't have an equivalent of that. And then how do you even develop that? You know what I mean? Like, it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy, like, the task is enormous. And this is why a communist state is probably the one place where it's easier to get done. You know, they got because they control all the money.
You know what? This is where it could happen. It could happen if you look in somewhere in Europe and you look into the academy setting, because you have access to people there. Like, and parents have kind of signed off that they want their children in that setting. So there is probably where you could. No?
Yeah, I think that
potentially.
I think it's is it Marco Cardinale that's at the Inspire place over in the Middle East? I want to say I'm going to screw this up. Somewhere in the Middle East. He used to be. He was Carmelo Bosco's protege.
Gotcha.
And he actually headed up the British Olympic group for a while back in like 2012 when they were going, you know, when they were hosting the Olympics. And then he went over, I think, in the Middle East. They have a something like that. But I think the problem runs really deep, and that's why I don't think it'll be duplicated in our lifetimes at all, because of how fundamental the problem is for development. You know, where do you start? Well, you have to start first by having the high-level scientists, people who are brilliant in math and engineering, psychology, things of this nature, and then fund that, and then start training the next generation, if you will, of scientists. Very difficult to do. Not easy. Not easy at all.
Now, anybody listening to this might be like, okay, Yosef, if there's not, but if you've said and we've said that there's nothing new under the sun, what would then be the point to then try to conduct research? Now, I like me hearing that, it's like, well, that's just a defeated mindset of like, well, we have nothing left new to learn. Like, you can still test prior things under different conditions for different athletes and different protocols, and you could just be even more dialed in and specific with it. Powerlift is Strength Coach Network's trusted provider for exercise equipment. Made here in the USA, right down the road in the state of Iowa, Powerlift has the ability to customize whatever you need in your room, regardless of the sector of strength and conditioning. If you need a massive, big room, they have the ability to help you with that. If you're confined with space and you need to get creative, their reps are able to help you get what you need done and being able to get any customizations that you or your organization want with your logo on the equipment. Click the link down below to learn more about Powerlift, and if you have any questions about them, please feel free to reach out to us.
For sure. And well, the other thing is, one of the last conversations that I had with Dr. Bondarchuk, he was talking about one of the books that he had written that hasn't even been, I haven't even translated it yet, but it was on research in the brain and how the brain adapts to training. And I said, what are you reading now? I mean, because everything's done. Like, is there something new there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah. He said in the last 2 or 3 years, he said there's some newer stuff in the area of brain development. It was in Russian. He said there's still some stuff going on over there. He said it's nothing like it used to be, but he said there are still things going on over there in that area. I don't want to say I was totally surprised, but I was a little bit surprised. I was like, really? And he said, yeah, there's still stuff, you're still seeing stuff, happen in different places. And I think that, I guess my point is, not a defeatist point of view is that our jump off place is way, way lower than where they left off. So there would be a time of you having to kind of, you know what I mean? Like you'd have to get up to that same level and then create something that's actually new, I guess is my point. Like you might be able to research something a little bit new, but you still kind of got to get up to the level that they left off at, right?
Yep.
And that is, to me, that's probably the challenge, is that part of it. And by the way, let me say this for people who would say, oh, what's the point? Here's what the good news, I guess, is that we still don't understand most of what they did. And so we need to learn what they did first before we go off and try to do something better, because what they did is so poorly understood here, as is evidenced by what we see in the training. Like if you go to a national conference and you see the speakers, and this isn't a knock at anybody, but they're not presenting something new. Who's going to a national level conference in the United States and they're presenting new science? It's not happening. You know what I mean? We talk more about the interpersonal relationships with coaches and athletes more than we do about the actual science. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but I think our focus isn't on the actual field, which is trying to get them to be better, right? To be better athletes. We're talking about, well, how do we communicate with each other, interdepartmental things and things of this nature. I get that, and I get the idea of the management component of it, but we really don't talk like new science. I mean, like even like with Dr. Mann, he's elucidating stuff maybe now that had not been known, before about velocity training or power training, but the concept was already done in the 70s. He was just picking up on it, and he's carrying it now, and I think he's gonna, show new stuff that'll be valuable to the coach. But nonetheless, the concept wasn't new. You know what I mean? Like it just, it's not disheartening, but I think that what we need to do is focus in, like what we're doing right here with this book. We need to focus in on stuff that's already been written from other systems, whether it be the Soviets or the East Germans. The East Germans had some really good stuff, and other countries have too. We just seem to be behind for no good reason, in my opinion.
Yeah, we don't have it, like you said, we don't have anybody ponying up the money to make it a priority, because it doesn't. They're going to just say it doesn't matter, or I don't.
Well, and we've got the best genetic pool of talent in the world because of our cross section of ethnicities. It just doesn't. It's not as big of an issue. because we still win a
And
lot.
people would say, how come we're not winning the I mean, Noah Lyles did win, but we're not coming close to Usain Bolt's times.
No, and we're not. And I mean, it doesn't look like we got it coming anytime soon either. Because they got a kid. I think they got a kid in Jamaica right now that is showing. I think he's a teenager, but they think he's on that same pace. He's running as fast as Usain Bolt did at the same age, if I remember correctly.
I think I saw a headline too. I didn't read the whole article, so I can't comment. I have to respectfully decline to talk more about it.
Let me read you something else here. We were talking about what we're talking about, the hypertrophy component. I'm going to read it's a small paragraph, but I'm going to read all of it because I think it's relevant. Growth of any living structure is related to the balance between its volume and its surface area. When muscle hypertrophy occurs, the surface of the fibers grow more slowly than their volume, and according to Hartwig and Mazzia, this imbalance causes the fibers to disintegrate and restructure in a way which preserves their original thermodynamic state. It would appear that light and medium increases in loading require less energy, facilitate cell repair, minimize the occurrence of destructive processes, and stimulate the synthesis of new non-hypertrophic organelles. Medium loads applied with a medium rate of increase in loading produce intense muscular development, the process in this case referred to as rational adaptation.
So I wrote in there and I bracketed it. I wrote 1/20 - long to short. Right there.
Who knew, right? I thought that was eye-catching.
Yeah, I did too. Because, like you said, it's been here. This isn't anything new. Doc did right. Like he.
Yeah. He wasn't pulling it out of his butt. I think that's what a lot of people think. They're like, oh, he doesn't provide any citations or research or anything else. But in fact, he did. He just didn't tell you, but he didn't pull it out of nowhere. This was
Is it because people are just still so afraid of being the mask of I won't be outworked, I want to prove? Is that why? Right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, if I think about it, right, like
I have said over and over again that it's cultural. Our training is cultural. It has nothing to do with science. And we adopt
cult. Me, we're being
cult. Yeah, a cult. I think that what it is we adopt the mentality of the military mistakenly, not in more than one way. We adopt this military thing. You know how, like, let's say we're going to war, right? Which I think is an insult to people who actually go to war. You're just playing football.
I can't agree with you more.
Calm down on that. You have never been shot in the face, and you haven't seen one of your friends be shot in the face. Shut up about the war stuff. It's not war. It's voluntary, number one. Number two, you get paid a lot of money, and number three, you're not going to get shot. So everybody can calm down on that. I think that's very disrespectful to guys that are in the military who go to war. So please, if you're out there and you say that, please don't do that, because I think it's insulting. Secondly, parts of the military are it's hard. It has to be hard. It's part of the equation, right? Like your mental toughness is developed, but it's directly related to the mental challenge, if you will. So if they take a Navy SEAL and they drop them off in the middle of the ocean and like, you got to figure out how to get back. It's cold, whatever. Good luck. Because that's going to be real. That's going to happen, right? That's real life. That's translatable mental toughness. But when you try to take military training into football and you say, this is going to translate into mental toughness, that's not mental toughness. It doesn't translate. Mental toughness is being able to operate calmly under duress and execute under duress. That's what it is. I was just talking to someone just recently, and they said, like, mental toughness, for example, in basketball is less turnovers. That's mental toughness. Not making stupid mistakes. And if you were to look at guys that are in the military that are, in special forces, not making mistakes is the biggest issue under duress. So they put them in situations under duress and say, can you still make the rational decision under duress, right? And we lose that in football. All we worry about is, did you puke? Or, you know, but it doesn't translate. I understand the rationale on some level, but I don't understand continuing with it when we realize it doesn't really help. You know, I think that the Oklahoma State study is far undervalued. Look at it. Look, it didn't translate. So let's figure out what we're doing here. Because if, you know, you and I have talked about this before, it's like, you know, if your financial planner is working harder than everybody else, you don't really care.
No.
All you want are results. you know what I mean? It's my money. I don't care how hard you work. I don't care if you didn't work at all. You know what I mean? If you return on my money, I don't care what you did. You know what I mean? If you just slept on it, fine. Made me money, good. And I think that if you're a head coach and you're dealing with your strength coach, like, look, I don't care about anything other than they're faster and stronger and quicker, and they can last the whole game and they don't get hurt. Do those things.
Can
and I
you
don't care how
provide
you
that
do it.
that Oklahoma State study so I can send it out to everybody?
Yeah. I'll
Not
look it
right
up.
now. Like you, yeah.
I'll look it up and send it over because that is. I don't understand why that is not acknowledged enough. You know, it tells you they don't get faster in college. Isn't that the point? You know, and even after the sophomore year, they showed that they don't get bigger or stronger either. Only the first 2 years do they get bigger and stronger, and then after that, that tails off. So the last 2 years is an absolute waste of time.
Dashr Strength Coach Network's trusted provider for timing gates for your athletes. Whether you're trying to run A-cells, curve, flies, change in direction with the Pro Agility, the 505, modified 505, whatever you want to do, get valid and reliable setup with your Dashr. I had the black, the blue, and now we have the silver at Goldfinch. We're completely moving over from the blues to just only having the silvers. I only test my athletes on the silvers because it has helped me save so much time, whether I'm going from Ankeny over to Nevada or Ankeny over to Huxley, whatever I got to do. I save so much time, and I want you to be able to save so much time with your setup because we know that time is precious as strength coaches. Now, not only are you going to be able to save time, but you're going to be able to save money with this great product, and you have a valid and reliable product that has run through countless different articles, as you continue to see online being published with the accuracy of this information. So, if you want to learn more about Dashr, click the link down below to be able to go to their website and learn more about them.
I mean, you know what I mean? If you didn't get any of those objectives accomplished, what were we doing, right? Isn't that? I mean,
it's such a fickle game
kind of
because people. Well, I'm saying it's a fickle game because that's where people are continuing in team sports. Like that's why I want to see the study because in team sports you're dealing with I'm getting bigger. I'm getting bigger. Because okay, obviously max velo could potentially be going down when you're talking about somebody going to an offensive line position or whatnot, and all the different variables. And if you're emphasizing being, able to peak for the season and play in season versus, hey, we're just worrying about getting faster. Like, I'd love to see different track athletes and all of that because, but you and I do both know there are some strength coaches out there that are flying by the seat of their pants and they're programming, very last minute of what's going to happen when they're working with their group of athletes.
Sure. So, hopefully, what you're doing here is going to at least have some influence on that. It took back in the opposite direction.
How about this overcoaching versus letting the athlete figure it out?
Yeah. So I just experienced
that was page 71.
Yeah, I just experienced that yesterday a little bit. I was talking with somebody that's shadowing me, and the technique of one of the kids was not phenomenal that I'm okay. Training. And I'm like, look, sometimes I let them figure it out for a little bit. They're not in danger of being hurt, right? I am giving them some feedback, but I let them figure it out for a while. And what I find, what's interesting to me is that in most of the cases, they figure it out, but I'll let it go for a little while. As long as it's not getting worse and it's not going to be injurious, I let them work through it a little bit and try not to overcoach, every single aspect. And I think that's a psychological thing on the part of the coach. He needs to be needed and needs to be important.
Ooh. You're right.
My supposition on this with coaching in a general sense, when I hear somebody say, I want to have an impact on the kids, for example, or on the athletes. And I immediately think, well, it's about you then. It's not about the athlete, it's about you. You want to have the impact. You want to be the one. But if you have a servant's, attitude of just serving what's needed by the people that you work with, it's a different focus, right? Because then it's not about me. And then I'm not as defensive about if somebody critiques what I'm doing. And then I'm more focused in, well, what's good for the athlete? Instead of, they just don't respond to me correctly, and I'm not appreciated. And there's a lot of different things that come out of that, right? If you're trying to be the person who is the person who's having the impact, you'll hear them say, if a player comes to me later and thanks me because I did this or that for them, I'm really happy. And the happiness should end at the fact that you were a servant, and that's it. You know what I mean?
I hit a lot of people right in between the eyeballs right there.
I think ego is an enormous part of this at the head coaching level and at the strength coach level. I think an ego is people, you hear this a lot, and this is more in this, I think more in this current generation. People need to be recognized, a lot. And here's what I found out by accident. This is completely by accident, and we're going way off course here, but indulge me for about 1 minute. When I got into this, I had no intentions of ever working with an athlete. When I first started, I was the athlete, and that's all I cared about. And then when I started learning, I didn't want to tell anybody else what I was doing because I'm competitive. I didn't want to help anybody.
Yeah.
Screw that, right? And as time went on, I remember Doc telling me, he goes, you could tell everybody what you're doing. It's not going to matter. And then as time went on, some people would ask for my help. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, here it is. This is, I'm thinking of myself as sharing technical information, right? Like how to. And what caught me off guard was the appreciation or the positive response I got from the athletes. And I couldn't for a while there, I couldn't understand why. I'm like, I'm just help, you needed the help. Here it is. Here's how it works. And I found that over time now, I never had the original intention. And this is not a yay for me kind of thing, because I have an ego for sure. And I don't know if I guard it, but I definitely have it. And I'm competitive. I want to be better than everybody at what I'm doing. That's just my nature. But I didn't go into it with this intent of affecting other people. So I didn't even think about it. It was accidental. It wasn't altruistic on my part, and it was accidental totally. I was like, and I started noticing coaches, they're always talking about impact and what I'm doing with the athletes and, how I'm affecting them. And I never even thought about it because that wasn't my objective. And then I slowly kind of fell into it. And now at this age, I realize, yeah, you are having an impact. But the reason why you're having an impact is because you're just there to serve. If you're doing that, if you're just serving, right? I keep the main thing. I don't worry about anything else other than you came to me to run faster, throw farther, jump higher, yes. Right? Yep. Okay. But let's get that done. You didn't come to me for any other reason. You didn't come for me to teach you toughness. You know what I mean? I'm not a life coach. What am I, Tony Robbins? Running faster is technical. It's not motivate. I see like sprint coaches putting this up, all this motivational nonsense. Just make them run faster. That's it. Motivation for what? Like, you can try all you want to run faster, and you ain't running faster. You can be as focused and driven as you want to. Good luck. You have to understand the technical aspects of it so you can get the job done. Am I wrong?
All right. No.
All right, so that was my little, and I don't want to call it a rant, but it was just an accidental thing, and I noticed this, that the focus of a lot of coaches, I think, is directed incorrectly, and that's one of the reasons why they don't get the results or they have problems with athletes.
Player Data is Strength Coach Network's trusted provider for GPS technology, and it's simple. The price you cannot beat, and the validity and accuracy of their technology is second to none. The price is outstanding. Go ahead and reach out to them to learn more about the pricing specific to you and however many units you're going to get. And then the validity. Player Data has been tested and run through FIFA's validation process for FIFA to then be utilizing Player Data technology. FIFA, we all know that name. They would not be utilizing a product that cannot live up to the competition and cannot be able to provide real, live, and accurate data. Player Data is able to do this. Not only do they have great software and hardware, but I know that the customer service is fantastic because I have worked with these individuals before. Click the link down below to learn more about Player Data. Well, and to translate it back to the book, on page 71, athletes who strain inefficiently using brute force to perform a maneuver, which would take place effortlessly if more attention were paid to perfecting technique right there, right? Instead of like if you can teach the athlete the technique to do the thing and you create the environment where they are rested, they are eating properly, they feel valued. Now they can go out and just express what they have been taught by you because you've created the environment and you've taught them.
Yeah, here's something that ties to that as well that I bracketed. Hence, learning correct technique is essential not only for efficiency, but also for preventing injury. Neglect of this basic rule is commonplace amongst many athletes who strain inefficiently using brute force to perform a maneuver which could take place effortlessly if more attention were paid to perfecting technique. So you said before, I think you were mentioning somebody talking about Olympic weightlifting or power clean, and that was beneficial for contact. But that's more of the example of brute force, and not the technique too. I don't think they're independent. They need to be put together. You do need the brute force, but you also need to perfect the technique. This goes back to things like Doc would say is like, yeah, squatting is good, yeah, for sure. But we also want to look at some of the things that are involved in technique of running to not only make them more efficient and also more force output or power output, I should say. But like if you use what we'd call specialized exercises that reinforce good technique, the running is more efficient or the throwing is more efficient, and it allows for more power. It allows for less injury, especially less. I think a less injury, I think, is a big thing there. In more than one way, on the connective tissue and also on the lack of like I don't want to say wildness, but where the technique gets all over the place. I think it plays a big role there too. So yeah, I mean, technique is huge, and it's very undervalued in this situation. And if you will,
no one's looking at the Seattle Seahawks right now. Right? Anybody listening that watched the Super Bowl, they're not like, hey, how much does that team power clean, back squat? They just want to, like, that sport coach just wants to know that defense can get after the ball.
There you go. Let me read you something else real quick that I saw. Repetition of incorrect movements will eventually result in there becoming built-in reflexes which are difficult to erase. So at the early stages, when you're teaching, if you have incorrect movements or bad technique, they're hard to erase. Any attempt to change faulty technique usually results in a feeling of awkwardness and an inability to perform as comfortably as before. This is because the body has adapted to its inefficient movement patterns, and the emotional distress caused by apparently useless new techniques can prevent the athlete from implementing technique during rapid movements. Or I'm sorry, during implementing any changes. I'm sorry. Often one will hear a coach or colleague shouting instructions to a competitor. Think about this. Think about your kid. How old are your kids?
8 and 6.
Okay, 8 and 6. This is interesting. Often one will hear a coach or colleague shouting instructions to a competitor, correct faulty technique during rapid movements. This is little more than useless because it is not possible consciously to change the course of any movement which lasts less than 0.4 seconds, swinging a bat. Moreover, the well-known phenomenon of paralysis by analysis may result if the athlete tries to correct or advise himself immediately before or during a skilled maneuver. So, overcoaching, yelling at a kid while he's at the plate or he's on the mound is useless. He can't change the technique, even if he wanted to. So
I wrote LOL right there because yes, you're right.
Like how, I mean, it's funny that Yuri pointed this out. to me it is, because you wouldn't think that this would be something that he would be, mentioning, but he puts it in there.
Because it is that valuable, like, because, and maybe it's okay, hey, anybody listening is like, okay, what about this, Yosef? Like if someone's doing a set of 8 on squats and I'm like, sure, you're telling them for the next rep, but you're not going to say anything like, because everybody's thinking like, okay, when the athlete's getting out of the bottom, when they want to stand up and squat, like drive. It's like, but the athlete knows to do that already.
What do you think they're going to do? It's like when
they're like, oh, I shouldn't just stay in the bottom. Get CEUs faster, cheaper, and more convenient than ever before with Strength Coach Network. Hey, it's Justin, here to tell you about how Strength Coach Network can now help you out with our premium membership and CEUs to the NSCA and CSCCa. Upon signing up for our premium membership, you will get 2.0 or 10 CEUs immediately. That is an entire year's worth of CEUs that you are able to access from the convenience of your office. No traveling for conferences, no waiting on flights, no eating out, no expensive hotels. Just the good stuff from great coaches. Now, if you need extra CEUs for past years during the reporting period, we can bundle Fundamentals 1 or 2, which also come with 2.0 or 10 CEUs to your purchase. That way, you're able to take care of your CEUs for the best price, most convenient, and learn from some of the best coaches. If you want more help with this, email us at service@Strength Coach Network or visit us at strengthcoachnetwork.com, and I would be delighted to help you out.
Kids were playing when they were younger. The coach would be up there, okay, let's be a hitter. As opposed to what? What do you think my other thoughts were?
Yeah.
like I
just wanted to stand up here and hold a bat.
I wanted to be a stander. I don't want to be a hitter. I want to just stand there. Come on, man. But yeah, I think that's an important thing. Like in what you mentioned with the overcoaching component, it's just, I think it's our need to be important and valued, I think that plays a bigger role in this than people want to admit.
What would be the last thing, the resounding thing from these 15 pages that you want everybody to take away? Because the big things that I wrote here was understanding the difficulty of research, brain reaction time, hypertrophy. What's kind of your overarching theme?
Let me look here. You know what? I got a couple little small points, little sentences here. I'll recite them and then I can comment if that makes sense. Okay, they were talking about like a point of specialization or simulation. And I thought this was good, and this it fits into what we just talked about. Unless simulation takes over a small, well-controlled segment of a complicated movement or with very small differences in loading, it should form no part of an athlete's routine. Strength and skill are different aspects of training and generally should be developed separately, except in sports such as weightlifting, gymnastics, whatever. Here's what the thing. He says in parts, small, well-controlled segments, specialized exercises. SDE, what you call SDE, parts of it, separate, and you train them that way, and that makes sense. But trying to train it globally, under conditions that don't make sense, like with a sled that maybe is way too heavy, or certain or running uphill with real choppy steps.
Or a baseball bat that's too heavy. I think that was
Yes,
the
or
example they used too.
baseball bats, all those things are way too heavy. Zatsiorsky said this, Dr. Yes has said this, the implement that you use in heavier and lighter, and so did Bondarchuk, cannot affect negatively the technique. If they do, then it doesn't fit. So you have to figure out if the technique is changing. How do you do that? You have to have a pretty good knowledge of biomechanics, which most people don't, so they should not go doing this on their own, like making stabs at stuff. You know what I mean? So I think that's important. And then one of the other things that was talked about, and I just want to reiterate, is that moderate intensity, high repetition exercises used in bodybuilding and circuit training can convert fast twitch fibers into behaving more like slow fibers. So what we just need to know there is, like, look, chasing that bodybuilding thing, it's going to be a negative for you. It's going to train them to act like slow twitch fibers, and this is not what we want. So I think that was an important one. And then I think I had one other little, that might be it. So I think that what I took from this was the idea of practicing, like, and he talks about autogenic training, how the psychological and the mental or physical kind of combine, and work together. I think that this idea of mastery of technique, and where on the autogenic training they say, like, in visualizing what you're going to do is important. Yeah. And what I find effective with athletes improving their technique is I film them doing it and then I show them. Yeah. And you'd be surprised. They'll always be like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was doing that." They didn't even, you know what I mean? They didn't even know. And I think that's true a lot of times. So I think that what the biggest things to take away here are, look, the training has to be suited towards what you're going to do. So, the fast twitch, I hate to say like exclusively fast twitch fibers because it's on a spectrum, but you're training in that direction of being explosive. If you're training in the direction just to get bigger and stronger, I don't think that that's going to have value for you in the long run, because there's going to be an end to that. And like what we talked about, I think Brian mentioned it was like 18 months in and it no longer has an effect and you have to get a little bit more specialized. So I think I think the thing is to realize is that this is not as simplistic as you'd like it to be. There's more moving parts, right?
I actually thought about that as I was watching football, going to bed last night. I was like, man, there is more to this science. Sure, we're not landing rockets on the moon and going outer space, but there is more to understanding the science behind what we're asking the athletes to do, rather than just go grind and do the dumb hard thing. Because if every team right now in college football, American football, they're doing the all these difficult mat drill type things to improve mental toughness, but if everybody's doing the same thing but not every team wins it, then it goes back to research that we talked in the beginning. How can you say that that's the thing that was the reason? And sure, qualitative studies matter as well and the person's subjective, but it's hard to identify that is the one singular thing. And I don't think when Indiana won it all, first of all, I don't think they were doing mat drills, toughness drills. They were just training smart. I don't think that when they were down, playing Miami, they were like, "Hey boys, you remember in January and February where we were doing those mat drills?" Like, I don't see that happening.
Right. No, I think that the reason why the Soviets dominated was because of the science. They set out on a mission after World War II. We're going to win. And then when Helsinki came around, all of a sudden they're winning. And from that point forward, they're dominating. Why is that? It's not because of the drug use, because the drug use was apparent everywhere. So it had to be the science. And when you look at the science, you're like, oh, wow, this is better. And then here's the ultimate test for me is the way that I train the athlete, and I watch the way other people train it. And then I don't debate on the merits of what we're doing. I look at the result, and the results aren't the same. They're always, I'm always producing a better result. So this is what I tell people. the science that is involved here is as complicated as brain surgery. However, if I'm wrong, you don't die. The consequences aren't dire. But the science this gets deep. You know what I mean? When you start understanding the brain and you know how the nervous system works and biology and stuff, and a lot of the world-class people in those areas, like in biology, they're like, we don't understand the body at all. You know, we have very little understanding. So my point is that this is deep, and we're not anywhere near, you know, understanding it on any great level. So yeah, I hate overcomplicating, because that really drives me nuts. But just remember, it's not as simplistic as you think. It's not just let's go lift heavy, you know what I mean, eat a lot, and you know, and then we're going to be better. Because once everybody's doing that, if everybody's doing that, like you said, everybody's doing that, let's say at the Division I level or the pro level, then the only variable is who's working the smartest. Because there's only 24 hours in a day.
Correct.
So the only variability now is efficiency. So it's the same thing with, you know, everything else in life. Like a business, the reason why one business excels over another one is because they got more efficient and they produced a better result for the customer because they understood.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It wasn't that they worked a 22-hour day.
Right. You can only work so much, right? And the key to our economy being better is productivity. It's better results per hour of labor expended, right? And that's what we're looking for here. We're just looking for better return on investment for our expenditure of energy and time and work.
That's a perfect place to wrap it up here, brother.
Thank you, sir.
See you next week.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, click right here for videos just like that, and make sure you click here to subscribe to our channel. Have a great rest of your day.